Okay. Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome. Maybe this is the first time you've been in Carter Hall all year. So it's exciting to be here towards the end of the semester. I'm Matt Hanka. I'm Associate Professor of Political Science in the Political Science, Public Administration, and Philosophy Department in the College of Liberal Arts. I've been here since 2010. So it's an honor to be here. Thank you to Ellie for inviting me to moderate this debate tonight. There's some important changes to the format that I would like to share. The Feminist Majority Alliance has backed out of this debate this week and is unrepresented this evening. So the Students for Life will be presenting their side of the argument, which will be followed by a question and answer time block. 1 minute to ask questions and 2 minutes to answer. So when you opportunity to ask questions, you have 1 minute, and then the representatives from Students for Life will have 2 minutes to answer. So the purpose of this event is to bring students together to participate in a respectful dialogue in affirming or negating the statement, abortion is a woman's right. So please, all of you who are here, please refrain from shouting, booing, clapping, or any disrespectful comments. Let's promote an atmosphere of civility and respect. And a lot of times we talk about this. Some of you may have been here even a few years ago when Dr. Bennett was talking a lot about civility. It was a major theme of hers one year, that we can be civil and disagree. We can respect other people's viewpoints and respect the person. So let's be civil, let's be cordial, let's be considerate. So no shouting, no booing, no clapping of any kind, be respectful. Keep the conversation respectful or controlled, or you'll be asked to leave. So we've asked public safety to be here as a precaution to ensure the safety of all those present. I know this isn't a very emotionally charged issue, but it's important that we maintain that civility and decorum, okay? So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Vice President Lydia Mesner and President Ellie Kiesel, who will represent the pro-life side this evening, with Ellie going first. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. Before we begin, I want to address the death of a friend of mine, as well as a member of Students for Life. You guys might have seen the chocolate whenever you first came in. So whenever we heard the news, we discussed whether it was appropriate to continue to hold this event. But because Paige was going to be here and was passionate about fighting for the lives of the unborn, we find ourselves here tonight, and we want to dedicate this to Paige. I'd like to invite you guys all to just join me in a moment of silence in honor of Paige. All right, thank you guys. So let's get into it. We, Students for Life, are committed to dialogue, public dialogue from opposing sides. We know it's very much important to expose ourselves to ideas of which we do not agree with in order for any change to occur. And that is why in December of 2020, we reached out to the Feminist Majority Alliance about tonight's event, and we're excited when they agreed to co-sponsor. It seemed we would have a respectful exchange of ideas from opposing sides so that you, the audience, could come to your own conclusion. Sadly, the Feminist Majority Alliance group has backed out last minute, even though we did all we could to ensure the Feminist Majority Club interests were met with tonight's event. They are refusing and participating in public dialogue. While we cannot force them to honor the agreement to defend the pro-choice side tonight, we will not allow them to cancel public dialogue, and so tonight's event will take place. I want to thank the university for allowing us, for Dr. Hanka for agreeing to be our moderator tonight, and I really don't think that we hold respectful discussions about topics like the topic of tonight enough, and I encourage you all to not be afraid of talking about important issues, no matter what side you're on, in a respectful manner. Our goal tonight is to provide the truth on the topic of abortion, not to shame, not to condemn, not to hate anyone who has had an abortion, but to provide the truth. I am sorry that women who have had abortions feel like that's their only option. There are 3 points we want to make. Number 1, a woman does not have the right to intentionally kill an innocent human being. Number 2, the unborn are innocent human beings. Number 3, elective abortion intentionally kills an innocent human being. Therefore, elective abortion is not a woman's right. Commonly, the pro-choice side brings up arguments that do not focus on the question that leads to the topic of tonight, and that is, what are the unborn? Because if the unborn are not human beings, then abortion is a woman's right because it is just like any other medical procedure. But if the unborn are human beings, like you and I with the same rights, then abortion is not a woman's right and can never be justified. For instance, the economic circumstances of the mother do not get to the question, what are the unborn? We understand how difficult a circumstance a young woman may find herself in when it comes to financial hardship, and we are not discounting that hardship. However, a woman who cannot financially support her 2-year-old who was already born does not have the right to kill her 2-year-old because of her economic hardship. We need to determine in this discussion tonight if the rights of the 2-year-old extend to the rights of the unborn. So, what are the unborn? Another argument that does not get to the main question is stating that if abortion were illegal, women would still obtain abortions in a more dangerous way. For example, back alley abortions. Because of this reason, many say abortion should be legal. However, does this mean that we should legalize murder because it happens even though it is illegal? Or should we legalize bank robbery to make it more safe for robbers? No. The born child receives legal protection under the law. We should see if those same rights extend to the unborn. So again, what are the unborn? Another argument that is brought up is in the case of rape. I first want to address that rape is horrific, and my heart goes out to anyone who has experienced sexual abuse or rape of any kind. And I truly believe that the rapist should be charged to the highest extent. However, a 2-year-old child that was born from rape cannot be killed because of the circumstances of his or her conception. Do those rights extend to the unborn? We do not even send the guilty rapist to death row, so why should we kill the innocent child in the womb? So, what are the unborn? Scientifically, the unborn are human, alive, and whole. The unborn are human. They have human parents with human DNA. Not just the mother's DNA, not just the father's, but separate, unique DNA. We believe that to indicate that life begins at any other point after conception has flawed logic and is denying science. The unborn are alive. The unborn are growing and receiving nutrients from the mother to continue to grow. The unborn are whole. If the unborn are given the right nutrients, environment, and adequate time, they will develop into mature beings of the human species. Some might then say, well, they're human beings, but they're not persons. Pro-choicers may come up with reasons as to why the unborn are not persons, such as size, level of development, the environment the unborn baby is in, and the degree of dependency. The unborn are clearly smaller than a born human. It's hard to reason, though, how size disqualifies someone from being a person. A 2-year-old is smaller than a 12-year-old. Can we kill the 2-year-old because he or she is not as big as a teenager? No, because a person's value is not based on their size. Level of development. Even adults differ in how they think or how sensitive they are to pain or how self-aware they are. How can you value all of these people the same even though some of them can't think well? And some children can't feel pain at all. Does this just disqualify them? Some severely disabled people aren't self-aware. People in a reversible coma aren't thinking, feeling pain, and they definitely are not aware of themselves. In order to be consistent, aren't you going to have to disqualify all of these people with disabilities also? Environment. The unborn are located in a different environment than a born human. We can all agree on that. How does your location, though, affect your value? Can changing your environment alter your status as a person? An astronaut who spacewalks in orbit is in a different environment than a person on a planet. No one could reasonably deny his personhood simply because he's in a different location. How can a 7-inch journey through the birth canal magically transform a valueless human into a valuable human? Nothing has changed except their location. How does moving from inside the womb to outside the womb change your value? Degree of dependency. You're right, the unborn cannot survive on their own, but why do you have to be able to do that to be a person? The unborn are dependent upon the mother's body for nutrition and a proper environment. It's hard to see, though, how depending upon another person disqualifies you from being a person. Newborns and toddlers still depend on their parents to provide nutrition and a safe environment. Can a mother kill her newborn because he depends on her body for nutrition? Or imagine that you're alone and witnessed a toddler fall into a swimming pool. Would you be justified in walking away and ignoring the fact that he is drowning simply because he is dependent on you for survival? Does this dependency determine his value? Of course not. Since the unborn depends on his mother in the same way, it's not reasonable to disqualify their value either. What we have found is that the other side just picks a difference and says because they have that difference, they don't matter. Throughout the history of the world, here's what's happened. 2 things. 1, a strong, powerful group wants to oppress a weak, marginal group. So they find a difference between the strong and the weak, and they say, because you have that difference, we have the right to oppress you. That has always happened, as well as something else. The strong group has always been wrong. Examples include the Holocaust, slavery, the Ugandan genocide, and more. Because of the above reasons, no matter the circumstance, abortion is not a woman's right. We can talk about what rights born people have all day, but without the most basic human right, the right to life, no other rights are possible.
Good evening. My body, my choice. Not only is this probably pro-choice's biggest and most popular argument, it's also the weakest and most flawed. Let's spend a couple minutes just breaking that down and looking into the implications of that statement and what is actually being said there. My body, my choice poses the question related to bodily autonomy. Are we actually free to do what we want with our bodies? I think we can all agree that the answer is yes. But my right to do whatever I want with my body ends when it infringes upon another human being. So for example, I can swing my arms around just like this all day if I want to, forever and ever. But as soon as I start hitting someone with my arms, that is no longer my right to swing my arms around and hit people because it is infringing upon someone else's right and it is harming them. As a woman myself, I strongly agree that women do have rights. However, our rights as women to fair treatment, equality, and resources all begin with the human right to life. By supporting abortion and saying, my body, my choice, we are effectively taking away that right from millions of unborn women. Pro-choice advocates like to say, abortion is best for the mother. Abortion is more safe than birth sometimes. It is the woman's right to choose what is best for her. And my favorite argument, it is the woman's right, and white men in Washington can't choose what's best for her and take that away from her. Yes, absolutely. We agree that our bodies are not public property, but the government, as upholders of justice, has a duty to protect innocent human life and that responsibility to step in when human lives are threatened. For example, you wouldn't tell someone that they have the right to abuse or neglect a born child, right? Well, why not? Ultimately, it's because it's not your right and because it's not your body. Parents, by natural law, are responsible for the well-being of the lives they produce. This applies to both men and women as equal responsible parties. So like Ellie talked about, the moment that conception occurs, a human being begins its journey towards adulthood. It grows from zygote to embryo to fetus to newborn to toddler to adolescent and finally reaches the end stages of adulthood, which is where most of us are now. Life in the womb as a fetus is simply another developmental stage of life, such as childhood, adolescence, adulthood, etc. Like toddler or adolescent, the terms embryo and fetus do not refer to non-humans or parasites, but to humans at particular stages of development. It starts with being a fetus. We were all once fetuses, just like we were once children and continue to develop through stages to where we are now in our adulthood. From the moment of conception, the unborn are alive and depend on their mother for nutrients and shelter and protection, just like any newborn or toddler would. From the moment of conception, the woman carries another life inside of her. From the moment of conception, abortion is never a woman's right. Her body is no longer her own. Now, the pro-choice side argues the question of, what if a pregnancy endangers the life of the mother? Isn't it her right to terminate that pregnancy for her own life to be saved? This argument is made in a lot of cases of ectopic pregnancies or high-risk pregnancies. And let me quickly refute that by saying abortion is never medically necessary. It is never medically necessary to kill the baby to save the life of the mother. Dr. Anthony Levatino, a former abortionist, lawyer, and OBGYN medical student director and residency program director at Albany Medical Center in New York, is now retired and donates most of his time to pro-life activism. He worked with high-risk pregnancies that endangered lives of countless mothers and babies for over 10 years and was not obligated to kill any babies whatsoever to save the life of the mother in that entire duration of his career. Rather than aborting any babies, he was able to induce the pregnant woman or perform a cesarean section surgery in attempt to both save mom and newborn. To quote him, "Not all of the preterm babies made it, but they all had a chance, and many of them did make it," end quote. So this shows that even in difficult cases like ectopic pregnancies, abortion is never medically necessary. While yes, the unborn child does not always make it and survive, there is never a reason to intentionally kill an innocent human being. Some pro-choice advocates argue that because the baby is dependent on the mother for survival, that woman has the right to detach herself from the baby. They like to use Judith Jarvis Thompson's famous thought experiment, arguing that forcing a woman to remain pregnant is like forcing a person to remain attached by tubes and wires to a stranger in a hospital bed. But this argument is a fallacy, something that is logically just false. It neglects to consider multiple things, one being abortion is not just the woman detaching herself from the baby or unplugging. This is the direct, intentional killing of a human life. We're not talking about just removing tubes and wires, like taking someone off of a ventilator, for example. We're talking about the direct, active murder of a person. Second, this analogy forgets that the relationship aspect of pregnancy is really the most important, except in rape cases. When a man and woman consensually have sex, they bear the responsibility for the resulting child just by natural law. Parents may not abandon their children or refuse to provide for their needs. This is enforced by law. Just like men cannot escape the legal responsibilities of paying child support for an unwanted child that is born, women also have the responsibility to care for that child that they have conceived. If a woman wishes to withdraw support from her unborn child and reclaim her autonomy, it would only be necessary to remove the child from her womb. Abortion is a form of removing the child, but it adds an extra step when it intentionally, violently dismembers the child and kills it in the womb before removing it. This step is just not necessary, and it is not justified by the argument for autonomy whatsoever, because autonomy only allows you to take the child out of the woman's body, not kill it. Babies can survive outside the womb as early as 21 weeks, and as technology continues to advance, the bar for that number keeps getting lower. But all that said, dependency is still no reason to kill someone. If we're really granting autonomy to pregnant women, it would mean giving them the right to have their babies removed from their bodies at whatever point they prefer. In many cases, that removal would probably result in a child's death. But in many cases, it would not. But in no case whatsoever would it be necessary to directly kill the child on purpose. The killing of the child has nothing to do with autonomy. It is just murder, plain and simple. We understand that rape cases happen, and those cases are completely unconsensual, and these situations are tragic and should be avenged. As we've said before, the rapist should be prosecuted to the highest extent of the law. But in the case of rape, while the woman is the first victim, abortion would lead to an unnecessary second victim, which is the innocent unborn child. I also want to point out here that pro-choice people use circumstances like rape and ectopic pregnancies and incest to justify millions of other abortions. The American Journal of Public Health in 2017 reported that these cases, rape, incest, and ectopic pregnancies, high-risk ones, make up less than 1% of all abortions in the United States. Using the fringe circumstances like rape, incest, and high-risk pregnancies, even as horrific as they are, to justify 99% of others only serves to distract from the real issue and principle at hand. What are the unborn, and is it the woman's right to abort? I believe in this presentation we have answered those two questions thoroughly already. No matter the case, circumstance does not determine personhood. Our goal with this presentation is not at all to victimize women that have had abortions or condemn them in any way. We're not calling them murderers. We don't want them punished or shamed at all. That is not the intent here. We simply want women and men to know the truth of abortion and what it is and why it's wrong. Every argument that we've discussed can be boiled down to the determining question, what are the unborn? We have proven that the unborn are human beings like you and I with the same human rights. With this proof comes the fact that abortion is not a woman's right and can never be justified under any circumstance. I will say again, circumstance does not determine personhood. This concludes our opening presentation and leaves you, the audience, to make your own decision and draw your own conclusions on the statement, is abortion a woman's right or not? We will now invite and encourage any questions from the audience. We are happy to answer anything that you're confused about or have questions about still. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. If you have any questions, please come to the lectern up here. And 1 minute to ask. If you have any statements, you have 1 minute, and they will respond either to your question or to your statement. So please come up if any of you.
And if anybody disagrees. Guys, we really do want to have like a respectful discussion about this. So you're very welcome to come up to the stand and just form a line. We would love if you guys would come up.
And we'll keep this to time. I mean, you guys have been here in the, we'll probably build an ark with the flood outside with the, you heard the rain. So we're keeping this to 1 minute for questions and statements and 2 for responses. So be swift, and I'll cut you off if you go over, okay? So you guys too. Who'd like to come up and?
If everyone here is pro-life, then that's great. But if not, we really would love to have some respectful discussion with you guys.
Does anybody have any questions of clarifying points or statements that were made by the speakers? They covered a lot. Does anybody have any clarifying points or questions? Yes, please come up here. Okay. You're student body president for 21-22, leadership by example, right? La Presidenta.
I'm not here to fight anyone or like actually debate. I just did have a point of clarification. I wrote down a quote that says, if they are given enough time, they will become a developed person. So wouldn't that by definition make them a developing person and therefore not a developed person? I just wanted clarification on that.
Yeah, that's a good.
All right.
So she said, sorry.
Does this one work?
Yeah, it's on, right?
Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
it was on the whole time.
Could you guys hear my question?
Yeah.
Okay. It was about like developed, or you will become a developed person, therefore you are developing. That was my
Yeah,
question.
go ahead, 1 minute, 40 seconds.
Okay, so yes, we are not saying that. Your question was that we said that the baby is developing and not developed, right?
You said that the baby would become developed,
Yes,
but
into a
then you were saying that because they would become developed, they are already developed, but becoming makes them developing.
So yeah, we are saying like the baby as a fetus or a zygote or whatever it is in the womb is developing just like any other stage of life, like adolescent or toddler, child, toddler. They are just continuously developing. Does that make sense?
Yes, but in other parts of your argument too, you were saying that a fetus or an unborn child is already a developed human. And the fact that it is a whole human, I believe you used that direct words. And so I just wanted,
Yeah, so we believe, or scientifically proven, like if the unborn have the nutrients, environment, and time, so nutrients being the mother's nutrients that she gives the child, the unborn child, the environment, which is the mother's womb where the unborn can survive, and then time, it will develop into a full human person, but in the womb, it's just another stage going to that.
sure, am I allowed to ask a question after that?
Go ahead.
Sure, not to fight everyone.
You're doing start time.
Yeah, I've already been starting
Okay.
time.
So in that sense, though, is a seed the same thing as a plant? Just because a seed needs that water and those nutrients and that time and that love, but does that make it a plant? Or is it still, there's a fundamental difference, and we recognize that that is not the same thing as, that thing over there? It's tiny.
So she said, is a seed a plant? And my answer to that would be, it's a developing plant. So whenever it has the right nutrients, such as rain, the soil, the environment outside in the sun, and time, it will develop into a plant, and it's going to continue to develop. So the seed is just like the first stage of the plant, and then the roots grow and everything else, kind of like the baby continues to develop in the womb. Does that make sense?
And I'm more
Thank you.
responsive to that one. It's not an actual debate.
No, yeah,
Anyone
thank
else
you.
ask questions?
Yeah, thank you so much. And anyone else? Just any other question? Yeah.
And you can ask a question or make a statement as well, and they can respond.
Oh boy, is this guy working? Alrighty, seems like it is. I'm going to preface this by saying I did not have anything preemptive,
Okay.
but there was one thing I kind of wanted to point out here. I believe you brought up an argument about personhood, and you brought up a lot of, gosh, I can't remember all of them, but a lot of the circumstances that you brought up in relation to personhood seem to relate to, I believe, if you could repeat them actually, because I believe there was one point of contention I had with that.
Let me get the specifics for you. Are you talking about size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency?
Yeah, that right there. When it comes to personhood, I love that argument with personhood because whenever you have a debate like this, it always boils down to the idea behind personhood. That's what everyone seems to always be dancing around, and getting to the core of that I think is very important to coming to a conclusion when it comes to this kind of discussion. And I guess when it comes to me is I don't believe when it comes to personhood, there needs to be a lived experience for somebody to develop into a person. Obviously, the developing, a zygote, embryo, all that stuff, I'm not denying that's not a human being, but I would have an argument about personhood in that case, because I do believe in order for someone to attain personhood, they need to have interactions with the world for them to develop into an individual.
Right. So he was saying you need experience for personhood, right? To determine personhood?
Yes, you need to interact with the world to develop into a person.
Yes. And so in that case, like, would you consider a newborn a person because it doesn't have any experience?
Yes, because whenever they were born, they entered into the world, they started having an experience in interacting with the outside world.
Okay, you said whenever they were born. So what is the difference between the born child and the unborn? Just the experience? Is that what defines a person?
I'd say it's that experience, yeah. As I said, you need to interact with the world in order to get things back out from it, in order to develop into a person, I feel like.
Okay.
Develop memories, experiences.
So why does that make a person a person? just experience? Because if you think about like someone in a coma, when they're in a coma, they're not experiencing anything. Are they just not people in that moment?
No, actually. I would argue that it is a pause of that person's experience. And while the period that they are within that coma, I do feel as though that they are still a person because it's just a pause of that experience. And it can resume assuming the person awakens from the coma.
Okay, and so presuming the person awakens from the coma. So if a person was in a coma for 9 months or something like that, would they, whenever they come out of that, they're persons again, right?
They were a person to begin with because, as I said, it's merely a pausation of that interaction with the outside world that develops one into a person.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
The only argument with that, I would say, is how does experience make a person a person?
Yeah.
Because that's not what is fundamentally most important. I just don't believe that's that experience. But yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah. Awesome.
Okay, 26.
Thank
Okay, great. All right. Good questions, discussions. Anyone else?
Hi. So whenever pro-choicers they address the pro-life, they usually come down to like what is adoption versus abortion. So could you talk about like in the terms of pro-lifers not wanting to adopt, or they're only pro-birth, or address that situation?
Sure. Yeah, so commonly we get told that we're only pro-birth. We don't care about the baby as soon as it's born, and that is simply not true. So Students for Life, we've had many diaper drives and donations to local pregnancy centers because we want to support the women who are having financial trouble and are in those difficult circumstances, because we want to support them in both their life as well as the unborn child. And so to say that we're just pro-birth is a little bit disappointing, and I don't think people are looking at the full picture. And when it comes to the number of couples who want to adopt right now, a lot of them are pro-life and have fertility issues and things like that. So saying that we are just pro-birth is false. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Come on up.
Really quickly, I'm going to say just 2 little points really quick to address the question from the gentleman up here about personhood. And first of all, I think it's important to point out that the unborn within the womb, science has shown that babies in the womb can hear music. They can, even in some rare cases, have memories and things like that. And so I don't really think it's fair to say that as soon as they begin, they are born, that's when they start experiencing things and interacting with their environment, and that's what makes them a person, because they're already interacting with the enclosed environment while they're in the room. Second, I think it's important to point out that even though you can say that personhood begins when you come into the world, I have a couple of statistics I want to share with you. There was a student at the University of Chicago, and he did a study on 5,337 biologists, and those biologists affirmed that human life begins at fertilization. This is important because he surveyed another several thousand people and said, who is best to say when does life begin? And an overwhelming percentage, I think it was 97% of those people said biologists are the one that should say that. And 96% of those biologists that he surveyed said life begins at conception. So you can argue however long you want when personhood begins, but that does not have anything to do with when life begins. Thank you.
Okay, carry on.
Okay. Do you think that fetuses, as they are not presently capable of being listed as dependents on things like taxes, have the right to be claimed as such because, as your side tends to say, human life begins at conception?
So you're saying because the unborn cannot file taxes?
No, because they can't be claimed as dependents.
when it comes to taxes.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you're asking the question inconsistent with their argument.
Yes.
Why
to-
aren't fetuses able to be counted as claimed on taxes?
Or do you at least think they should be able
Or
to?
do you think they should be able to?
Yeah, I didn't even know that. I'm sorry. Yeah, I definitely think that they should be able to.
Okay.
That's all I'd like to know.
As-
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, a minute.
So, in response, I just want to add on again to that last question. Because the baby is in the womb, I would say we do believe that they should be claimed on taxes because that baby, unless something went wrong with the pregnancy and they knew, such as in those high-risk pregnancies where they knew, like in many ectopic pregnancies, those babies do not make it. They will either result in the mother's death, or sometimes they just take care of themselves unless something is done to take care of that pregnancy. But in response to the question, the babies could be claimed on taxes because, yes, they are alive. They are going to eventually pass through the birth canal and become a human. And at that point, they obviously will be claimed on taxes. But it's like Ellie was saying, the size, the level of development, the environment, the location of the baby does not determine whether it's alive or whether it's a person or not. So our answer is yes.
Thank you. Next. Yeah, come on up.
There we go. So sorry to sneak up here again. I did want to respond to what you had to say because I thought it was very interesting. First of all, let me get this clear. What you said on the first statement that I said, that some babies are able to, I believe, hear music and sounds through the womb, and that is thus an experience from which they can, develop personhood from. Is that essentially the point that you were trying to make there?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yes. Oh gosh, the microphone's falling. It's not liking me today. Oh no. Okay, I think we're good. In essence, I believe the point that you tried to make is that during development, some of the fetuses, whenever they're within the mother's womb, they are able to hear sounds, they're able to hear music and things like that. That's the argument that you were making, that they're able to develop personhood in the womb. Is that correct?
I am arguing that they are able to have they are able to have experiences.
Yes.
Because earlier you were arguing that's what makes someone human, whether or not they have experiences and interact with their outside environment. They are interacting with the outside environment if they can do things like hear.
Yes, certainly. I'm not denying that they're a human being. My argument lies within personhood. And I would merely fall back on the point is, well, if they can have an outside experience, say if they develop ears and they're able to interact with the outside world and say hear like their father talk through the mother's womb, I could just fall back and say, well, maybe they're not a person up until they develop the ability to hear noises. Say, I don't believe they can hear anything when they're a zygote.
But you do believe that once they begin to interact, that makes them
Yeah,
a
when
person.
they develop personhood. When they
Do you
interact with the
believe
world.
that they are alive before that point?
Yes, I'm not denying that they're alive. I fully acknowledge that a fertilized egg, up until it develops as a human being, my problem lies within personhood. So I consider those two very distinct things.
Then do you assume that abortions are okay until that child can interact with the environment?
That's always really tricky for me. Obviously, I didn't have enough time to prepare these points right here, but up until the point in all the premises that I've made thus far, I would have to probably say that. But there does seem to be a point in which personhood is not attained. So up until that point, with assuming that everything I say is true, if they don't have personhood up until that point, then I do believe that they don't have a continuous experience. Or
Even though that baby will continue developing and they will continue to gain those experiences, you still think it's okay to kill them?
if they don't have the personhood, if they don't develop the personhood, well,
My question is it right, is it okay to kill something that is going to become,
That has the potential.
that has the
That has
potential
the potential.
to develop that personhood, and to take that right, that opportunity away from them just because they don't yet?
Up until this point, I would say I would bite the bullet on this and say yes. As I said, I don't have enough time to develop these premises. So, but up until the premises that I've made so far and all the statements that I've made, I would have to say yes to that.
We'll leave it at that. Good job. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
Okay, so I just have some quick clarifications that I would like to ask you guys. Seeing that you support life, I want to ask you, do you believe that all pregnant women are entitled to sufficient maternal care, prenatal and postnatal?
Yes, absolutely.
So would you support that by supporting policies that support universal health care?
Abortion's not health care.
Okay, but maternal services are. So having a baby costs money, having a child costs money, and especially in healthcare. Giving birth is expensive. So therefore, if abortion isn't healthcare, then maternal care definitely is. So would you support universal health care to provide that services to mothers?
I definitely think that people with financial instability, we do need to focus on helping those women. I don't know if we agree on the same term as far as healthcare, but I do think that we need to help them with those financial issues, not issues, but as well as far as birth. I do think that we should help with those finances.
Okay, well, what about children post-birth?
Yes.
Toddlers, healthcare, all of that things.
Yes, I think, I kind of see where you're going maybe. I think that there's a lot of work to be done outside of the womb, right? Like there's foster care, there's all these issues, but unfortunately, whenever there's abortion, the intentional killing of human beings, they don't even get to come into the world and have a chance. So until that is illegal, then I want to focus on that, and then we will go to the next step. It's kind of like you don't get mad at the American Cancer Association for not fighting diabetes. They're focusing on cancer. Yeah, diabetes are bad, but they're focusing on cancer. Does that make sense?
I feel like that's an irrelevant point because you cannot focus on women not having abortions without addressing their initial concern. So if you eliminate the need for abortions, then the number of abortions will go down. So if you are to take this stance and to go forth and say, we are going to provide health care for these women and their children, both prenatal and postnatal, then I feel like you would have a much better position.
I agree with you. I think we should support women prenatal and postnatal. I 100% agree with you financially. I just don't think that abortion is anywhere in that equation.
And I'm not sure if she was saying that.
Oh,
She
okay.
she was saying you were not really
I'm
even
sorry.
using the word abortion as healthcare, right?
No, I did not address that abortion was
wasn't
health
addressing
care. I just was addressing the fact that if you want women to have less abortions, then you need to support women.
We do support women. I 100% agree with you that we should support them financially. That's why Students for Life does things like the diaper drive. We really do want to reach out to these women who are less off. We want to help them. I agree with you. Thank you for your
Okay.
question.
Thank you. Okay, anyone? Yes.
Okay, so the name of your guys' group is Students for Life, right? Life for you guys means from the beginning of conception till death, correct? So why does your organization not focus on not only abortion, but mental health, the death penalty, anything that really involves life? How come there is not, if your group is Students for Life, Why is it so only focused on eliminating abortion instead of all the other things that could kill other people?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So Students for Life, the original group, Students for Life of America, our goal is to abolish abortion. And so that's more of a personal belief of thinking that life is precious through all life stages, mentally health, all those things you were talking about. But Students for Life as an organization is their focus is ending abortion. So we don't focus on all those other things because that's not what our main goal is. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier, like we don't agree that, like we agree with you that all those other things are important, but our focus is abortion. So Students for Life, they were founded to end abortion.
Right, but being pro-life essentially should include being pro-life throughout every stage of life, not just because you don't agree with that specific.
That aspect.
Yes.
Yeah, and you're right, but the pro-life term originated because of abortion. So that's what our organization exists for. But I completely agree with you. There's other things, other aspects of life. You know, life is so precious. That's why we do need to care for the mentally ill and all those other things. But our club doesn't focus on that. Do you see what I mean? I completely agree, though. I think we need to focus on all those things. But just Students for Life, that's not why we exist.
Would it not give you guys a more reputable ground to stand on if you not only focused on taking away the right of abortion for women and instead focused on every aspect if you wanted to stand and say, we're pro-life, however, we're only pro-life if you want to terminate a pregnancy?
Yeah. I will go back to what I said, though. Students for Life specifically was created for abortion. I do agree that all life is precious from all stages, all disabilities, everything. But our organization, we didn't create it. We are just a branch of the main Students for Life, which is to abolish abortion. Does that make sense?
It does, but where does the death penalty fall into line as people that are pro-life?
So, Students for Life, I will say, we don't do anything other than focus on abortion, but is this just a question outside of Students for Life?
Well, if as a person that is pro-life, as someone who says that they are pro-life completely through and through, where do majority of you guys stand, or you personally, on the fact, on death penalty?
Mm-hmm. I don't think that this applies to the conversation right now, but I would love to talk to you afterwards.
Because
for right now,
death penalty doesn't apply to being pro-life when it comes to abortions.
Students for Life is specifically abortion. So we are specifically pro-life in ending abortion. So for this organization, Students for Life, euthanasia, all the death penalty, that doesn't apply to our organization.
Okay.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. Okay, who's next?
Hey, so the topic of personhood versus being a human life has come up several times throughout this conversation. I just wanted to kind of get a clarifying stance. Is being pro-life, defending the rights of all human beings as having dignity and rights as every other human being? Or is there some sort of caveat for, oh, you're not quite a person yet and only people have human rights? That's why I'll get clarification there.
No, we believe at conception, human and person.
All right, cool.
Does that answer your question?
Well, I was going to get the distinction between a human being and a person. So, to me, being pro-life, that means you defend the right to life for all humans as it's a human right, and not just a right on the edge of, well, you're a person, so therefore now you have human rights.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just want to kind of get a look at that caveat and say, are we only focusing on people or all humans?
Life is a human right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So we believe that all humans, all persons have the right to life.
Sounds good. Cool. Thank you.
Okay, next.
Hello. I believe you made an argument about, you said something about the government earlier. I just wanted clarification on that then.
Were you referring to the moment at which I said the government has a responsibility to defend the rights of humans? Or I said minimum.
Yes, as referring to the government has a right to step in when it comes to the life of human beings.
Yes. So let me quote exactly what I said to you. I said, absolutely, we agree. Our bodies are not public property, but the government, as upholders of justice, has a duty to protect innocent human life and responsibility to step in when human lives are threatened.
All right. I think that clarifies what I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, any comments or statements?
So you said that you considered a fertilized egg to be a life, right? So how do you feel about Plan B when it stops a fertilized egg from being implanted in the womb or the uterus?
So that is another conversation. For this right now, abortion, we're going to focus on abortion. That's another thing I would love to talk about afterwards. But for tonight's topic is abortion and women's right. We're just going to stick to abortion. But that's a very good point, and I would love to talk to you about that. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm strongly pro-life. However, I would like if you would be able to express your opinions a little bit more about abortion for children who are pre-diagnosed with disabilities. Thanks to the increase in medical advances, there are times when doctors can identify fetuses who do have pre-existing conditions and disabilities. A common question I've really been asked is, what does a mother do if she knows her child has a diagnosis she cannot support and doesn't want to birth a child who is guaranteed to have an extremely difficult life?
Right, yeah, that's a very good question. So in that circumstance, that life is no less valuable, right? And there are actually, it's amazing. There's actually couples lined up specifically to adopt those with disabilities. So if that mother who finds out that news that she is gonna have a child with disabilities and can't financially afford that, there are tons of people ready to adopt, and the value of that life does not change no matter what the circumstance is. But yeah, we definitely very strong at the fact that no matter what the baby is going to look like, what color, anything,
Right.
very, very valuable.
Their
Thank you for your
visibility.
question.
Thank you.
Okay.
Alrighty. My question is, what is abortion?
Abortion is the intentional killing of an innocent child.
Okay. So then after that, what is the implication of, what did you say, killing an innocent child or
Innocent
just killing
human
a
being.
child? Okay.
Innocent human being.
So what's the implication of that?
Implication of what? Sorry.
Like,
You're gonna have to
okay,
define it.
so is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
Intentionally killing an innocent human being,
Yes.
that's a bad thing.
Okay. Why is that a bad thing?
Because you're killing an innocent human being. You can't kill an innocent born person. Why can you kill an innocent unborn person?
Cool. Okay. What I'm getting at, I'm pro-life. What I'm getting at is that there's a specialness about human life that is, as you guys said several times, you mentioned the natural law, and that is something that happens, that moves through and impacts all of life. That's simply a natural thing. That's an innate characteristic of humans. It is automatically a bad thing to kill a person. Anyway.
Thank you. Hey, we agree. Thank you.
Anybody else?
All right, I am so sorry for coming up here like 3 or 4 times in a row, but this is an incredibly interesting topic to me, and I have not had much of a chance to engage with it really. But my biggest thing is in your ideal world, in the event that, say, Roe v. Wade has been overturned in the United States and abortion is now illegal, what do you plan on doing on, I'm an economics major. There's a supply and demand curve for just about anything. There is a demand for abortion because not everyone agrees with you on that stance. There's certain conditions that do materialize that some people feel necessitates an abortion. What will you do to minimize that? Or what would you do to deal with it?
So you're questioning like the economics. What will happen if it's?
Well, what I'm asking is, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
What I'm asking is that just because making something illegal does not remove the demand for that thing, you're making it illegal but not stopping the problem that allows it to materialize to begin with. And I think that's relatively short-sighted. So I think it would make your argument a lot stronger if you could supply policies and things that you would do to minimize the need for that kind of thing to happen for people.
And so what are you referring to? Like what problems? The financial things in those different
Oh
circumstances?
yeah, all sorts of problems. There's a lot of cascading economic problems that can happen as a result of that. For instance, adoption is a really good option for individuals who, don't support abortion, but not every child gets adopted. As a matter of fact, our adoption system here in the United States is not up to snuff, and it's not as good as it needs to be. And there's other cascading economic conditions that lead up to that point as well.
So all of those circumstances, like we talked about, circumstance doesn't determine personhood or value. So while all those are unfortunate, all those different circumstances and problems that women find themselves in, unfortunately and fortunately, that doesn't change that they're a human being and a person.
Yeah, but what would you do in order to facilitate these new people being brought into the world necessarily? Because, for instance, if someone is born and brought into the adoption system and they're brought up in foster care, more often than not they're going to be, say, abused by, improper foster parents, I should say. They're a lot more economically disadvantaged. They're less likely to make it in life. What would you do to mitigate those kinds of results that are going to happen as an influx of these people coming in?
Right. And so I would say, you can't kill someone right now. So let's say someone right now is in an abused relationship or is in a financial hardship. Do you think we should just kill them? I don't believe that we have the right to determine if they can live or not, determine based on what they will potentially come across.
Yeah, I'm not saying that
He's
at all.
not saying any of that. It's that there's a demand that exists out there. What are you going to do to minimize the demand?
Yeah, because even if it's illegal,
That's what
people
he's
will still
asking.
do it. That's going to be
Right.
inevitable. People still murder each other despite the fact that it's illegal. So it seems as though slapping a Band-Aid on it and making it illegal doesn't solve the problem.
Right.
It may reduce it marginally, but that's the kind of thing is still going to happen. I'm wondering how you're going to reduce that from happening, because that's your ultimate goal.
Right.
Just making it illegal doesn't really stop anything.
Right. So first our goal is to end abortion, but then after that, like the foster care system, we need to help that out. I think you mentioned the foster care system. We need to help them financially so our time can be so once abortion is illegal, we will move our focus to cases where those born children will still be in unfortunate circumstances.
But you can still minimize abortions without making it illegal. You could institute policies that say, optimizing birth control for people, making birth control universal for women so women of lower income are less likely to have unwanted children. There's other things that you can do without just slapping a Band-Aid of illegality upon it. Minimize it down to the point where it's hardly ever done. I think that would be a much better way to go about it than just saying it's illegal and saying that we're going to fix it afterwards.
Right. I agree that I think we should do all those things. But while it's still legal, we are working to make it illegal first, before we focus on all the other topics.
Yeah, but the legality or illegality of it doesn't matter. What matters is the result that it produces that you don't like. So I don't think that strictly saying this should be illegal doesn't solve the problem. That problem's still going to materialize. And I think focusing on the problem and minimizing the amount of abortions that happen in the United States would be much better than just saying this needs to be illegal, because it doesn't solve the problem.
20 seconds.
I would just say again, I see what you're saying, but our focus is to end abortion first. That's what Students for Life stands for. So all the other things outside of that, our organization does not tackle those issues.
Well, do you acknowledge making it illegal doesn't end it?
I acknowledge that's not going to end it, but just in the case of murder, like you mentioned and I mentioned earlier, should we make murder legal because it still happens? No,
Yeah,
we
but
shouldn't.
if it was legal, it happened more often. But when it's illegal, it still happens. So what can we do as a society? What things can we institute into society to aid our society to prevent that kind of thing from happening?
Unwanted pregnancies?
Yeah,
I think that Students for Life, our focus is to end abortion. So after that, we can work on everything else, the financial struggles, all of that. So the demand that you're talking about might still be there, but it will be harder for them to obtain.
I'd recommend having that plan before simply making it illegal, because when it becomes illegal, that demand's still going to be there. And if you don't have a solution to deal with that demand, it's not going to have the effect that you desire. It's only going to lead to more people being imprisoned in our overinflated prison system. And I think that I don't think that's an optimal solution. I think you need to come to the table with how you're going to deal with the ramifications of making it illegal before you decide to sweepingly say it is illegal, because it is going to have ramifications beyond the ethical arguments.
And I think one of the things he's asking, if it's illegal and it's still happening, what are you doing to still end it? That's kind of what he's been asking, is that in the possibility that we're getting to this place where it's illegal. Yeah, that's okay, we'll clarify. So in this world where Roe v. Wade passes, or Roe v. Wade makes it illegal, there's going to be a demand for it. How do you and your movement persist on trying to make sure that when it ends, and everything you can do to end it outside the context of legality of it? I think that's what you're asking.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And that is one of the biggest reasons that we hold events like this, where we get together a lot of intellectual students and adults on a college campus, and we talk about these problems, and we can start thinking about what we can do to help those women that feel like they have no option except to abort their baby. And so you're right, that's something that we also need to think about, because no, will 100% of abortions end when Roe v. Wade is overturned? If it is, that obviously, yes, there still will be abortions, but that's where you all come in. That's where we as a club cannot fix the entire problem without help from the nation, help from people that are both pro-life and pro-choice, because we all agree that we support women, and we all should be seeking to help these women, especially if they're in our lives, to help them find answers, find help, find resources. And so I'm saying that's where we come in as a community to help those people and recognize that that is an issue that we need to tackle.
Okay, time, thank you, thank you. Next person.
I would like to have asked what was the other group, the feminist?
The Feminist Majority Alliance.
Okay. If they were here, and I'm sad that they aren't here, because I would really, really be interested in hearing their opinion and hearing their side to this question. But to the question that I asked earlier, I would like to have asked them the same question and simply seen their response. Anyway,
Okay.
that's all I have.
Just a statement, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So something that I think is very important when we are talking about life is quality of life. And we need to ask ourselves, what kind of quality of life does a zygote have? What kind of quality of life does a fetus below 21 weeks have? Fetuses may be able to live outside of the womb at 21 weeks, but their quality of life is low, and there is a very high chance that they are going to die. And I want to ask you guys have probably heard of pulling the plug on somebody who is brain dead, no brain activity left. They have a heartbeat. So the heartbeat argument to me just doesn't make sense, because we pull that plug on people that have a heartbeat, who are brain dead, because they have no quality of life left. What quality of life does that zygote have? Like, what difference does it make? I'm sorry if that comes off as a little strong-willed, but there is no quality of life there.
So you're saying that because when they are before 21 weeks, when the zygote is less than 21 weeks old, they have no quality of life?
No, they do not.
Because why?
Because to me, they are not alive. To me, that is not a life. To me, that is a clump of cells.
And at what point does life begin then?
I do not believe in third trimester abortions. I do not believe in abortions after a certain point. I will say that. I believe that the quality of life begins at a point where a fetus can live outside of the womb without the pain that it can go through if it is outside of the womb. And because I I have firsthand experience seeing these babies outside of the womb, premature, and they have a horrible quality of life. It is not good, and oftentimes it is short, and it is just painful to put them through that pain that they are in.
Right, I agree. I think it's sad whenever babies are premature, but it's also beautiful because if we give them the right to life and with the medical treatment that we have, they are able to survive lots of times. Sometimes they're not able to survive, and that is sad. And why do we grieve that? Because that's a life that's valuable. I know someone personally, they had twins at 22 weeks. One of them didn't make it. One of them did. That does not mean that the other one was not a life. That does not mean any of that. That means that life is valuable no matter what. And that baby that is living now, 6 years old, is very valuable because we gave them the chance.
I'm sorry, you are saying that premature babies are, the experience that premature babies go through is beautiful. You think that's a beautiful thing?
I think giving them a chance is beautiful because of the medical treatment that we have today and being able to save those premature babies. I think that is beautiful, and I think it's amazing that what science has done for us. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Time. Okay.
So I just have a statement. In the terms of what the gentleman was saying about, what was he saying?
About what the demand of
Yes, demand,
abortion
supply and
after-
demand. You're asking what we would do, because I'm a pro-lifer myself. And I think the question that we really want to ask ourselves, like going with that, because that is a very important topic, is what we can do. Because a lot of times, and I'm sure there are statistics to back this up, a good majority of the time people don't want to take responsibility. And you can see that with anything, not just abortion, not just like anything. If I get into a car accident, I could blame it on the other person even though it was my fault. That can be said about abortion too. Now, yes, there are the obvious cases of rape and incest, which, like was mentioned, is less than a 1% instance. But whenever you're talking about the supply and demand, if you want answers for that, you need to be able to ask yourself, okay, what can I do? What can my family do? What can my friends do? Like, there are so many organizations that already contribute to that, but to sit here and ask an organization for a plan, it might be good to start asking yourself, like, what we can do as a community, as a United States, as globally. Like, it's not just one organization or one club. Because what they're actually doing is they're bringing the topic at hand. That's their starting point. They're addressing the situation that needs to be addressed for the legality of abortion, instead of just saying, oh, after this, it's not going to be fixed. So I just wanted to point that out. I felt compelled to say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is sperm a human?
Sperm is not a human. Would you like me to elaborate?
No,
All right, so with the whole quality of life thing and premature babies, I think it really comes down to understanding, like they mentioned earlier, the quality of life doesn't determine when a person is alive, such as somebody who's been on 2 years of chemo and is dying essentially. Do we go ahead and kill them because they're eventually going to die, or there's a probability of them dying? As well as when you talk about premature babies, I was basically dead whenever I came out of the womb because I was 14 weeks early. And I don't think it's necessarily that the premature life is beautiful necessarily, because it's very obviously not, but I lived it. And I think what is beauty is that I'm here today rather than just killing me saying, oh, he might die. That's it.
We have time for one more question or statement. Going once, going.
So you guys had mentioned that around 98 to 99% of abortions weren't related to like incest, rape, or anything like that. So then around like 98, 99%, whatever you want to say, would like that pregnancy would have initially been a choice to have that child. So does your organization think that it's kind of a cultural issue as well, and it's not going to be completely solved by just policies and stuff, but people are going to have to value lives themselves and realize that they can like prevent abortions?
So you're asking, do we think that it's not just a society problem, or it is a society problem?
It is a societal problem. People just maybe not value life as much and just kind of don't take sex as something that's like really important and that's going to lead to life, but we just don't necessarily consider like what's going to happen after that.
Right, so our organization, like Ellie has said many times earlier tonight, is dedicated to ending abortion. And while there are so many other factors that people become pro-life and reasons that they fight to save the lives of the unborn, such as just valuing life throughout all stages like we've talked about, and caring for the mothers, and valuing sex, and thinking many pro-life people associate their religious beliefs with the value of life, and they believe in the sanctity of life. I cannot speak for everyone that is pro-life because obviously, just like everyone that is pro-choice, there's a lot of varying views and a lot of varying beliefs. I will say, I do believe it is much a society problem in the fact that abortion is choosing what the mother believes is best for her and not either understanding or acknowledging the life inside her. I believe there are a lot of younger women, especially in those sad cases where like rape cases where a very young girl gets pregnant when she maybe doesn't understand exactly what an abortion is or even what really happened for that life to be conceived within her. She may not have a grasp of what that is, and that may lead her to just getting an abortion. And so again, that's kind of why we do things like that, to raise awareness of what this is, the horror that it is, and why we should not do it. So yes, I do agree that it is somewhat of a society problem in that sense, and that's kind of what we exist for, to educate people, show them what this is about, and take our stance on wanting to end it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you for your questions, comments, and important dialogue. So thank you very much. Do you have any last minute comments? Ellie, Lydia, do you have any last minute comments?
Thank you guys all for coming. While we do wish the Feminist Majority Alliance was able to come tonight and have some public dialogue with us, we thank you guys for coming and for all your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a safe drive home.